by getting into this Juneteenth thing just a little bit. And I want to put a different perspective on it, family. We want to really deal with Juneteenth and the Demancipation. We want to deal with it from that perspective because a lot of people have the wrong impression about Juneteenth. Uncle Rudy, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I've been listening to you.
And we want to talk about these things just a little bit. I'm not going to take a lot of your time on today, but I do want to talk a little bit about it and bring forth some light. But, Brother Stewart.
Yes, sir.
Before I get into that, you know, Mitch McConnell, he's kind of arrogant in his walk today.
Mm-hmm.
But I want y'all to know, and I want y'all to hear me good, that our ancestors, they got him.
Mm-hmm.
Are you listening to what I'm saying? Brother Mobley?
Yes, sir.
Do you hear what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Our ancestors, they've surrounded him now. And he will not be able to do the things that he has set in his mind to do. Now, listen. Once you awaken our ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
you have no way to defend yourself against them.
Ah.
And once they come out on you, they will deliver justice upon you. Mm-hmm. What am I saying? I'm saying pay close attention to Mitch McConnell. Are y'all listening?
Mm-hmm.
Pay close attention to Mitch McConnell. And watch Brasoya. And watch our ancestors work. Okay, let me get into it. Can I go further? Yeah, I can go a little bit further. But I'm going to hold it right there for now. But what I will tell you, he will not escape our ancestors.
Yes, sir.
And you will see it sooner than you think. Are you following me?
Uh-huh.
Okay, good. Let me go. So now let's talk about Juneteenth just a little bit. So Juneteenth, it was about in the year of 1863, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the Emancipation Proclamation at that time was signed. It was supposed to directly affect a group of people that came here in 1619, the second time.
Mm-hmm.
You know as well as I do that our ancestors were here before 1619.
Mm-hmm.
But the time that we're speaking about specifically, Brother Mobley, would be in 1619 when our people came in slave ships or on slave ships.
Mm-hmm.
So we're dealing with that particular time frame. So from 1619 to 1865, roughly 246 years, our people were in something called chattel slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by chattel slavery, we mean that they were chained.
Mm-hmm.
Then they were broken spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
They were broken educationally. Linguistically, they were broken because they couldn't speak their own languages anymore. Mm-hmm. And if they spoke with anybody in their native tongue, they would be destroyed.
Yes.
They didn't even have their names, Brother Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
Their names were changed. But you know, in West Africa more specifically, your name tells you so much about the person. The day, the tribe. So when you mention a person's name, you know what day they were born.
Mm-hmm.
You know what tribe they go to. Mm-hmm. All of these things become significant. But our ancestors were broken. That knowledge was destroyed from 1619 to 1865 and beyond. But in 1863, this Emancipation Proclamation was signed by then some Abraham Lincoln. The purpose of it, the Emancipation Proclamation, in their own theory, in our theory, was to free the slaves. Mm-hmm. The word emancipate means to free. Mm-hmm. But the word emancipate also means to put forth an effort to procure and obtain justice, freedom educationally, freedom politically, freedom spiritually, and freedom economically. Uh-huh. So when you say you are emancipated, that means that you've obtained those things. So when you say the Emancipation Proclamation, you're saying that you're putting forth the effort to give us freedom, to give us justice, to give us freedom educationally, to give it to us politically, to give it to us spiritually, and to give it to us economically. So if I ask you, Brother Stewart, have we been emancipated? What's the answer?
I'm going to say no.
No, of course we haven't been emancipated. Uncle Rudy, when you think about it, have we been emancipated?
I can't use the word I would like to use, but no.
No, we have not been emancipated. Now, we won't argue that we've been let go. We've been released. So in 1863, when this Emancipation Proclamation was signed, it released us. It let us go. But the real question is, let us go where? How can you let a man go after you've taken every understanding that he has about himself, about his history, about his spiritual system, about his ancestors? How can you let him go and expect him to go anywhere? No, he stayed there because he didn't have the resources to obtain freedom. So the Emancipation Proclamation signed in 1863 did not give us our freedom. Now listen, it was in Galveston, Texas. General Gordon came to tell the slaves that they were free. Now, this was in the year of 1865, nearly 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. Now, he's coming to us telling us, you're free. Now, wait a minute. When he said that to many of the slaves, they didn't understand what they were talking about. We're free. Free to do what? Free to continue to be slaves? You mean that we have the freedom to go and be slaves wherever we want to be? You mean that we're free? Free how? I can't separate myself from my slave master. My slave master is good to me. My slave master gives me fat back meat on Tuesday. And every Sunday, we get the pig's feet. And then every now and then, if we good on Sunday, on Wednesday, he'll give us the pigtail. And you want me to separate from my slave master and every Friday night we eat chitlins? You must be out of your cotton picking mind. This is what the slaves were saying. We're not leaving him. They were saying it, Uncle Rudy, because they didn't understand what freedom was. They didn't understand what it meant to be properly emancipated. So from 1619 to 1865, we were enslaved physically. Then, Brother Rudy, if you look at it a little bit further, the enslavement was not so much a physical challenge. It was a spiritual challenge. See, the problem with the former slaves, or not the former slaves, the slaves in this country now, is that you hurt us when you took our spiritual freedom away. You took the ability away from us to worship our gods. And then we had no way. Yeah, the God that you're worshiping now, this is not your God. Now, listen, you can play with it. You can play with it, but this is not your God. Now, to put it in perspective, who do y'all call God now in the church?
Jesus.
Jesus. You call him God. But describe him. He's got blonde hair. He's got blue eyes. He's got a thin nose. That's your God. Now listen, you can say that's not the case all you want to. But baby, I know your history. And because I know your history, I understand the psychology that's associated with your history. See, you can't say he's not your God and then be in the church that institutionalized that concept of God. You can't do that. You go and talk to a Christian now, they will argue you down that Jesus is who? God. They argue you down. Now, does Jesus have the power of God? Of course he does. But so does you. So do you. But let me get back on course. So now, in 1865, the Civil War started April 1st, 1861, ended April 9th, 1865. The Civil War. You were freed after the Civil War. But listen, but what was happening, the Confederately owned territory, meaning that the territories that was owned by the federal government, the slaves were let go. Now, what was happening around that time in 1863 is that the farmers in the South,
they won't let them go.
They won't let them go. But then those that were being challenged were moving their cotton production into Texas. Listen to me good. Let me put it in perspective for you. Did you know that around the year 1840, 50% of all America's exports was cotton? Do you know who was picking 100% of America's cotton?
We were.
We were. Did you know in 1840 also that 60% of the world's cotton was coming from the South? Did you hear that? 60% of the world's cotton was coming from the South. What does that mean? That means that the South, where the slaves were responsible for the growth, the wealth, the financial institutions in the United States of America. Don't you tell me the slaves had no significance here. Don't you tell me black people did not really contribute to America. We built this damn country. Listen, 60% now, 60%.
That's a lot, though, of the world.
Of all the world's cotton was coming from the South. Then on top of that, Britain, the biggest empire in modern history. They used to write, the scholars will say, the British Empire was so big, so strong, that the sun wouldn't even rise on it. 70% of all of cotton consumed in Britain was coming from the South in the United States of America. Are you following me?
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to show you who you really are. Now, watch this. The reason why we were such good cotton pickers, such good cotton producers. See, they don't want you to know this, but I can talk about it. It's because we were picking that fine Egyptian cotton. Stuart, are you listening? Okay. Come on and talk to me. The finest cotton of all cotton is Egyptian cotton. We knew about it. Picking cotton is difficult. But to some of us, it was second nature. Because we came from a cotton picking area in North Africa called Egypt. You know about it. What am I really saying to you? They changed our names so that there could be no identification. Right? No identity. So when I call your name, Brother Kojo, yeah, I know that you're born on Monday and you're from the tribe of God. Are you listening? I know out the gate. But if I call you Kojo now, there's no connection. I mean, Kojo. There is no connection with Africa and the motherland. There's no connection with the God tribe. There is no connection with it because you've been deprived. They changed your name. Where do we find this in the Bible? It's in the book of Daniel, chapter 3. They changed the name of the Hebrew boys. Huh? Meshach, Abednego. They changed our names. You follow me?
Yes, sir.
The same thing happened with you because that story was prophetical. So they erased your understanding of your history. They disconnected you from the motherland. You have no understanding of who you are historically. You don't know that your ancestors had a direct relationship with God himself. You don't know that your ancestors could go inside of them and pull the power of God out of them, so much so that they could control the animals, the flow of water systems. You see, you don't understand it. Where do we find this in the scripture? It's in the book of Psalms, chapter 83, verse 2. Here is how it reads. Our enemies form a tumult, and they that hate thee. Let me go back. It says our enemies form a tumult, right? And they that hate thee. They that what? And those that they that hate thee are our enemies, right? Our enemies form a tumult. And they that hate thee have taken crafty counsel against thee. They have lifted up their head against our hidden ones and say, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, such that the name of Israel is no longer in their remembrance. Did you hear that? Such that the name of Israel is no longer in their remembrance. We have to be destroyed, reduced, and minimized such that the name of Israel is no longer in your remembrance. When we say name, we don't just mean name. We mean what that name represents. The children of God, the power of God, the strength of God, the nature that ties in with the nature of the universe. All of that is gone. We have no understanding of it anymore. So this federal government came against us, destroyed us. You are celebrating Juneteenth, but there's nothing to be celebrated. Listen, you were let go. Now think about it. You weren't emancipated. You were let go. What are you celebrating? Now don't you, I know those of you that are out there that are so smart, we ain't in slavery no more. That's a lie. That's a lie. To suggest that you're not a slave, that is an absolute lie. Look at the condition of your community. No individual can rise any higher than the least of them within that community. Jesus writes in his teaching, if you haven't done it unto the least of thee, you have also not done it unto me, my brethren. Right?
Right.
What does that mean? That as long as one of you are in a destructive state of mind, all of you are there. This is what that means. So now, when we look at General Gordon going in to Galveston and letting the slaves go, many of the slaves refused to leave again because they didn't have the resources.
That's all they knew.
But what I want you to understand is this. They didn't give us, let me talk about it like this. They didn't give us a damn thing. Did they? But when the Europeans were coming over here, as far back if you want to go, but let's start in 1626. The Free Land Act, where they were giving them free land. All you had to do was build a shelter. I want to say a 5x12 shelter on the land. And after 5 years, that land was yours. You could claim as much as you wanted to claim. Y'all ain't listening. On some of that land, especially in the Midwest, do you know there was oil there? Do you know there was gold on some of that land? Do you know the gold that was on that land made the European rich? The oil on that land made the European rich. And you didn't get one drop? As a matter of fact, in 1997, the case started with the black farmers in the United States of America and settled in 2010, where the federal government, that United States Department of Agriculture was sued. Those bigots, those racists, they were sued. That's the biggest banking institution in suburban United States. They're the bank for the suburbs and rural areas. They are the banks. They ration money out in rural areas. I know you don't know anything about it. You don't know anything about it because you never get it. You never benefit from it. But the fact of the matter is they were sued. $1.4 billion. The black farmers settled, but they lost all of their land. Do you understand what I'm saying? Black farmers lost all of their land. All of their land. So you heard in the book Powernomics by Claude Anderson. We own 0.5% of 1% in the 1800s. We still own 0.5% of 1% today. This is according to the book called Powernomics under Claude Anderson. Why? They won't loan you money for land. Now, some of you, come on, let's not do the cheap thing. Well, you say, well, I got a loan for land. Come on, Negro. We ain't talking about you. You one out of 40 million, if you want to put it in perspective. So now, as we're moving, we see these discriminatory practices being put in place. Even still, then the codes were put in place. The slave codes, like we see in 1740, Article 36, in South Carolina in 1740, Article 36. You couldn't beat the drums. You see? Why can't you beat the drums? Because the Africans originally understood the power of communication in the drum. Somebody say Morse code. We understood the power. We had already coded the drumming based on the melanocytes in your melanin. What do I mean? Melanin is a super conductor. There is no conductor out there greater than melanin. Let's put it in perspective. Gold is a great conductor, but gold is about $340 a gram. $34 a gram.
Yeah.
Melanin is $350 a gram. Melanin is 10 times more expensive than gold. You see? Because melanin is such a great conductor. So, take me, for example. As a spiritual man, I can beat those drums. And while I'm beating those drums, what is in my mind will come through the melanocytes, connect with the drums, capture the airwaves, and go to you. This is how they were able to communicate in different parts of the South. Those Africans were getting to beat those drums, and uprisings were occurring. And at a specified time, and Europeans didn't understand how. But one day, one of them white boys heard somebody beating that drum. Are you listening? And when he heard him beating that drum, he saw things happening in another plantation. When they stopped beating the drums, they stopped happening. That's when they put the slave code in place. Article 36, South Carolina, 1740. That's when they put it in place. To stop you from communicating because you were a bad boy. You hear me? When God created you, he created the best of the best. In the Holy Quran, it says that God made you from the best of all materials. In the Holy Quran, chapter 15, what does it say? It says God made you from black mud, fashioned you into shape, and breathe life into you. This is the Holy Quran. Well, what does the Bible say? In the book of Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostril the breath of life, and man became what? A living soul. The Bible is telling you the same thing that the Quran is telling you, except it doesn't say black mud. But watch this. When you understand the Bible properly, you know that the soil had to be black. Because in the book of Genesis chapter 2, starting at the 14th verse, it says that land encompasseth all the land of what? Ethiopia. Ethiopia. What does Ethiopia mean?
Land of the black.
No, that's Kemet. Ethiopia means burnt face. Burnt face. So,
Like me.
yeah, burnt like you. So now listen, let's deal with this thing. So, you have not been emancipated. You have been demancipated. You have been demancipated, not emancipated. If you were emancipated, you would know your original name. You would know your original language. You would know your original spiritual system. You would, in fact, have access to economics. You don't have any of that. Think about it. Think about it. You have buying power of $1.4 trillion a year. That's your buying power. Let me put it in perspective. The United States of America, annually, their GDP is $21 trillion. The next closest country to them is China, $15 trillion. Then Japan, $5.6 trillion. Then Germany, $3.74 trillion. Then UK, $2.68 trillion. You do $1.4 trillion. Now, you ain't far from the UK. If the UK is doing 2.68, you doing 1.4, you $1 trillion off.
We on the air.
You own them. Now, what is the difference? The United States, China, Japan, Germany, UK, they have something called cultural congruence. Come on, somebody, and listen to me good. They practice something called cultural congruency. That means that when they do business, they do cultural business. They base their business on their culture. See, if a Mexican come in here tomorrow and opens up a Mexican store on Main Street, he put his Mexican signs there. He starts playing his Mexican music. You'll find that all the Mexicans from near around start coming there. That's how they do business. But you, on the other hand, because you've been demancipated, you got $1.4 trillion every year coming in, and it only stays in your community for 6 hours. What's wrong with you? And y'all got the nerve to call in here complaining about us using words like damn and hell and shit on the radio? Nigga, you crazy? What is wrong with you? You're complaining about that? And your dollar only stays in your community for 6 hours? What is wrong with you? Listen, think about it. 6 hours. Put it in perspective. The Asians, I'm coming. The Asians, their dollar circulates 18 times before, 18 days. 18 days before it leaves. The Jews, 21 days. You, 6 hours? You see, your mind is messed up. You've been demancipated. And it's been proclaimed. Go ahead, brother. What you got?
I was going to say, you know, Martin Luther King explained this many years ago.
What'd he say?
Huh?
What'd he say?
He said the same thing you said. Back there then when he was living, well, the black man in America was one of the most wealthy group of people outside 9 nations, okay? They made more, had more income. All right, right now, you take the hair industry. The hair industry. That back in the day, it's a $9 billion a year business, right? And back in the day, the blacks owned 100% of it. Today, the blacks own 30% of it. The Haitian, not Haitian, but I forgot the nationality of people that even own the black hair business.
Well, the Chinese is running it now.
Yeah, that's right, the Chinese. So here you see 90% of our businesses, right? Even the Mexican that you were speaking of come in. They'll set up a Chinese, Mexican restaurant, Chinese restaurant, and where they set it at?
Up in our community.
In our community.
Yeah, because they know that we've been demancipated, brother. They know that our minds are not right. They understand Psalms 83 and 2. They understand it to the full extent. Our enemies have formed a tumult, and they that hate us have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against our hidden ones and said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation such that the name of Israel is no longer in their remembrance. You see, when you look at those people that call themselves Jews, their dollars circulate 21 days. And they use the Torah and the Bible to teach economics. You see, we don't do that. All of that stuff has been taken away from us. But in order for us to be emancipated, let me show you briefly what has to happen. You heard me say that we were here before 1619, many of us, right? Now, I know that many of y'all certainly have been taught that the first black judge was who? Thurgood Marshall. That's not true. His name was Chesson. In 1768, he was rolling with Paul Revere and with Patrick Henry. When Paul Revere was saying, the British are coming, the British are coming, Paul went east. Judge Chesson, a black man, he went west, right? He was judged in 1768. Now, we had a black president in the very beginning. What's his name?
I know you're talking about.
His name escapes me.
I got it.
Yeah, but let's pull it up. So we had a black president.
Henson.
John
Henson. That's who it was. Yeah. And now look. Now hold on, brother. Hold on. Now I know you want some of this fire. It's coming. But go ahead, Uncle Rudy. That's my uncle. Let me let him go.
See, the problem with us, we won't listen to one another. The Bible speaks of listening, right? So when I told somebody, a young man called me and I pulled it up. John Hanson, the first black president. They were talking about Barack. And when I told somebody, man, there was a black president long before Obama, nigga, you crazy.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We won't consider it the United States of America then. all this.
The country hadn't won its independence.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, there was a black man that had enough knowledge that he could help lay down the presidency. Then in addition to that, don't forget Benjamin Banneker. Here's an interesting point that I want you to understand. Forget about the first, what do you call that book? Come on, somebody.
What are you talking about? The
Almanac.
yeah.
Look, sister, thank you so much. Thank you so much. May God be with you. Thank you very much. So look at Benjamin Banneker, who laid out the blueprint for Washington, D.C. Right? People used to say he was lazy because he slept all day. He was up studying all night. Laid out the blueprint for Washington, D.C. Now watch this. Here's what I want you to understand. When they took us from the continent, family, they took God's greatest people away. They interrupted God's greatest work. The Bible says that man is the glory of God. Not the sun, not the clouds, not the moon. Man is the glory. You're looking at his glory right now. You're listening at his glory. All black people is God's glory because we're the first of all creation. Now, Benjamin Banneker, let me tell you what he did that no one else had been able to do. And they don't teach it. When he wrote the Almanac, he was the most accurate of all almanacs. He was producing weather patterns, predicting weather patterns within the minute. Listen, and solar eclipses within 2 minutes. Are you listening? 2 minutes from when it was supposed to occur. This is how bad we were at one point. Now, what I also want you to get at is that the people that are coming, that were in the United States of America before 1619 was us. Now let me take y'all back a little bit, okay? Let me take y'all back. That flag called a Confederate flag. It's an X.
Yeah.
Come on. Now let me go somewhere with you a little bit. That X, Brother Stewart, is also significant to the obelisk of the Tekanu, as the Egyptians called it, that you see in Washington, D.C. Listen to me real good. That obelisk, or the Egyptians call it the Tekanu, in Washington, D.C., represents the resurrection of Horus, of Osiris, right? It represents the resurrection of Osiris. Why is it in Washington, D.C.? Now, the Lincoln Monument is laid out like the monument in ancient Egypt. You see that water, that little river there is the reflection pool. Just like in ancient Egypt, the reflection pool. Huh? Now, why? Because this is the modern day Egypt. Remember? This is the modern day Egypt. Just follow me for a second. I'm coming. Remember now, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 68, you will go into Egypt again. How? By ships. You will go into Egypt again by ship. You came from Egypt. And now you're into Egypt again by ships. Right? And there you would be sold as bondmen and bondwomen. Isn't that what happened to us? Yep. This is the modern day Egypt. But listen, the Tekanu represents the resurrection. When you see that Tekanu sign, it's reflective of resurrection. If you look at Ptah in ancient Egypt, you'll find that he would have his erection with the X crossing, which represents the resurrection. Why is this so important? Because when you look at the Confederate flag, you see the X. The Confederate flag is symbolic of the uniting of two different spears, the North and the South, right? The North and the South. In the ancient world, right? You have the tribe of Judah in the South, and then you have other tribes in the North. They were represented by two different hats. One was red and one was blue, right? Now, when you look at the Confederate flag, you're looking at the uniting through the resurrection, and that's what that Confederate flag comes from. That is not a European symbol. Thanks. But they've taken it and they made it into something that it's really not. You follow me? I am telling you that this is an ancient African symbol that we're dealing with. Even the Confederate flag in and of itself. Now, let's go further. Now, it's based on the resurrection of Osiris. Now, look at further into this. In order for us to be emancipated, we must get all of our history back. Hold that point. Now, why do I say we were here before the Europeans came here? Let me give it to you. Ivan Van Sertima has a book called They Came Before Columbus. They came before Columbus. All of the modern research shows that we were here at least 3,000 years before Columbus. A lot of this is based on the old Olmec heads. The old,
Down there in Mexico.
Down in Mexico, which is South America.
Yeah, South America.
The Olmec heads that they found, not just the head, but you look at the nose. You look at the lips. You look at the braids in the back of the hair. All right, some 3,000 years before Columbus. Right?
Right.
And so now let's go further. So when you take that and you combine that with what's happening now, the Smithsonian, you heard of the Koch brothers?
Yeah.
That display is still on. The Koch brothers spent $15 million on a display to show the origin of humanity. They spent $15 million. You know these conservative Koch brothers? That everybody that owns these tissue companies and so forth and so on, they got a $40 billion empire. That's what they're worth. They put on this $15 million display. And the display shows in the Smithsonian that the only people on the face of the earth for 250,000 years were black people. Now look, I don't care for the Koch brothers. I don't care for them. But I love the truth. The only people on the face of the earth for 250,000 years were the blacks. Now, I got to teach on this another day, but let me bring this point up. If you say the Bible only goes back 6,000 years, how do we be on earth for 250,000? You don't understand your Bible. You got to be taught that book.
I told you, Riddick, well, nobody wants to listen, man. Just like you go out there and you tell people, right? The first thing they said, we'll never be equal to the white man. What I call you and tell you? We won't never supposed to be equal.
We ain't supposed to be equal to him.
We're supposed to be superior to him, right?
Absolutely.
So what I'm saying is, for hundreds of years, we've been taught the truth, but we keep kicking it to the curb. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, see, that's because Carter G. Woodson got that book, The Miseducation of the Negro.
Yes, sir.
We have been miseducated.
Ain't no doubt.
They have took our mind out, put it on
the shelf. TV. Oh, I'll take that.
And they have programmed the mind, and then they put it back in our head. So now we around here having thoughts, thinking we thinking it, now understanding that they have programmed our thoughts. So when I ran for office, first thing they told me, oh, the white man ain't gonna let you win. They not gonna let you get in office. Now understanding that if you go vote, I'll win.
You'll win, yeah.
But the first thing you say is, they not. Because we have that defeatist mentality. We have been defeated, man.
Well, another thing is, too, when I was working, right, you know what the boss used to tell the guy? You can listen to that Negro if you want. You better be willing to pay the price, right? Yeah. And then we had a man said, well, we put a black guy in office, but the white folks wouldn't let him do nothing. So we got to overcome that too.
Yeah, brother, I like to make a point. The brother said Columbus was the first white man. You're right, Brother Ray. So listen at this. So what I'm getting at, you can't be emancipated until you're given the proper understanding of self, right? That's the only way you can be emancipated. We have not been given that. So we haven't been properly emancipated. What do I mean? So now if you keep traveling back home, go back home. But before you go back home, let me remind you, many of the articles have been taken off the internet. But in 1972, a Marine anthropologist was commissioned, along with an archaeologist, to go in and study the Grand Canyon. In 1972. When they went in there, not only did they find tunnels, caves, pyramids, but they found artifacts that they can trace directly back to ancient Egypt. They found drawings of people that look just like me and you, right? This was in 1972. Now watch this. When they carved and dated the artifacts, you know how far they said they go back? 50,000 years. 50,000 years. Now, wait a minute. Are you saying the black people were in America 50,000 years ago and further than that? Because think now, if the Koch brothers' $15 million display shows that we were the only people on the earth for at least 250,000 years. Then they say after 250,000 years, 40,000 years later, we walked into Asia. And then the Asian man appears. Then they say 20,000 years after being in Asia, we went into Europe. And the European appeared. You follow what I'm saying? This is what the Koch brothers, along with the archaeological and DNA research, suggests. And they have this display at the Smithsonian. $15 million. So all of that we got to re-understand. Now watch this now. Remember, the Library of Alexandria, that was in Egypt, was a conglomeration of a lot of small libraries. What Alexander did before they destroyed the Library of Alexandria is that they closed all of the small libraries and they combined all the data in one building. Now, within those buildings was something which is part of the mystery sciences that teaches much of what we're talking about. So when they moved these libraries to one central location, they were able to control the information even before we were brought into slavery. So a lot of that information couldn't get taught. But do you know where most of those documents are today? In the basement of the Vatican. In the basement of the Vatican. The Vatican has a, I forgot how big the library was underneath the Vatican. It's very long and it's guarded by armed men. Right? Much of your information is there. So when they burned the Library of Alexandria, there was at least 1 million volumes of book in the library. Everything that they couldn't take out, they just simply burned. So we have no understanding of what we were doing. But let me
go. One more place where the information is.
What? Timbuktu?
No, it's in our DNA.
In your DNA, absolutely.
Our DNA
I bet with
is the remembrance.
That's
of
right.
What and we're slowly starting to regain.
Ain't no doubt about it.
In us.
Say that again. And the reason I want you to say it again slow and easy, because there's a lot of people, right, will tell you they've been in America so long that there ain't no way they could have came from Africa. So have them to understand.
I'm just saying that the information that Tony is talking about that they have in the library, and at Vatican underground, we also have it. It's in our DNA. It's in our DNA remembrance. Right. So we're slowly being able to remember this stuff and start acknowledging it. That's why we always had a slang, right? That's why they say we speak Ebonics. Right. Well, if you look at African languages, it's different ways you can speak these languages. Right. And you can speak it regular, but then you have a certain way, like we say certain words, we know what the word means. Like we had church today, right? We know church. Well, the way you say church,
they were getting down.
It can mean a different way. But somebody else hear the word church, they just think regular service. Right. But you know what I'm saying? So we always had that in us. Right. And that's how the same with this information, we're slowly getting it back, man.
Only one thing. Hey, Riddick.
Yes, sir.
They said, we had church today. Well, what are you talking about? I don't know, but we had church.
Yeah, that definitely happens a lot.
I don't know what he's saying, but we had church.
Well, look, we got about 7 minutes.
One more thing.
Go ahead.
The word right. I can say the word right, and it can have 3 different. I can be like right. Yeah, the way you say it, absolutely. It means it's different. It's different meanings to it.
Yeah, the way. Yeah,
but this lets us know that we are coded with the way we respond and the way we communicate with each other.
And what happens is that when you use the language, your intended vibrational pattern gets in those melanocytes, and we interpret it based upon that rhythm. Yeah. Right. So this is what happened. So let me keep moving because I got about 7 minutes. So now we at the Library of Alexandria. But what I want you to understand, the oldest university in the world is not Bologna in Italy. When you Google it, it's going to say Bologna of Italy. Or then it says Oxford University. All this is garbage.
Right.
There was a university at the University of Luxor, even before Timbuktu and Mali. There was a university at the University of Luxor. This is why so many people, because Luxor was the central place for all learning. Anybody that wanted to come and learn the high sciences had to go to Egypt, with the capital being Luxor, right? The capital is Cairo now, but when Luxor was the capital, it was a place for all high learning. Now, and remember, if you go west into Mali, you got Timbuktu. The French went into Timbuktu in 1500. And the French said they have about 24,000 members in Timbuktu in the 1500s, the 15th century. But when you check and talk to the Mali, the people of Mali, they said, no. Our university goes back beyond the 11th century. If you look at the 11th century, we got 100,000 registered members in the 11th century. Now, let me give y'all something spiritually, right? Now, they tell us that Mansa Musa, the richest man ever in the history of the world, he was from Mali, Timbuktu. The richest man ever in the history of the world. He would be worth $400 billion today. He went into Mecca, Saudi Arabia. And they claim he learned Islam and came back into Mali. Now, I don't have documentation to support this. But spiritually, I know better. He took Islam into Saudi Arabia. Because the Arab that's in Saudi Arabia now, he's only been there around 1,500 years. So Mansa Musa took Islam into Saudi Arabia. And this is why you have the Islamic faith growing so much in Saudi Arabia and Mecca Arabia like it is. They destroyed the religion though. Just like many of the Europeans today have destroyed Christianity. The intended purpose for Christianity and Islam is not where it should be. It's not where it should be. So now we got Mali, right? And we got Timbuktu. You always hear Dr. John Hendrik Clark and Yosef Ben Yakimin and Sheikh Anta. They always say Egypt is Ethiopia's youngest daughter. The pyramids that are in Egypt are younger than the ones that are in Ethiopia. But the oldest ones that they've been able to find are in Uganda. So that means that the people had to migrate from the Ugandan region over to Ethiopia and then up or down to Egypt. This is how the pattern had to have gone. But what I'm saying to you is this. We have not been emancipated. You see? We were never emancipated. But I also go back to what I was telling you. Now, what does that mean? We haven't been given a proper understanding of ourselves. Because the intentions were for us still to remain slaves. Even after 1865, when the 13th Amendment was passed, no man can hold another man as a slave involuntarily. That means that the only way that you could be a slave, you had to volunteer, unless you committed a crime. Now, once you committed a crime, you could be locked up, then your rights are taken away. Then you would be working. They would loan you out to slave masters, and you would work. You see, while in jail. The same thing they do today. You work in jail for 15 cents, 20 cents an hour. It's the same thing that's happening, you see. So we were never properly emancipated. If we were properly emancipated, there's no waste to it that we would be killing each other like we're killing each other. You would never see that if we were properly emancipated. The police wouldn't even be killing people in our community because they would be too scared.
You know, they said crime done gone up 50%.
Look, let me add something. Let me tell y'all something. You know, back in slavery, you worked for the slave master. You didn't have to pay bills. That's right. What they did was they released us from the slave master, but now you work just enough to pay your bills to live. See, that's the difference. What they did was they played a mind job on us. They released us from slavery. Because back then, you didn't have to pay bills. You didn't have to pay rent. The slave master gave you a house. Now, when they release you, they give you a job just enough to work and pay your bills. So you're still enslaved. And when you were talking about Uganda,
they give you enough to work and pay your bills.
They give you enough just to pay your bills, to live, right?
No, they don't.
That's what they do. Well, that ain't enough. But since you mentioned Uganda, It's a comedic story that talks about. It says that we come from the foothills of the mountain, talking about the creation of people.
Yes.
And it says it's in that Uganda.
Yeah, Ethiopian region. Nobody will argue that. Yeah, nobody will argue that. And then also the story of Isis, Osiris, and Haru. It's about 4,000 years old in Egypt. Yeah. But it's 8,000-year-old story in Uganda, in that region. Yeah, I think most of our scholars, you know, some of them I just mentioned, would agree that the Ugandan Ethiopian region is where we originally came from. And we went up into Egypt, took that technology up into Egypt. And that's when the Romans and the Greeks discovered much of it and came down and destroyed us as a result of it. We got about 4 minutes left. And I've been banging for a minute. Now, y'all can chime in and shoot whatever you want to do. I got about another 18 minutes to go, but we good.
I'd just like to say this, in our teaching, right? From a Christian or religion or holy standpoint or spiritual, when you go to the church, modern day churches teaches prosperity, wealth and stuff, instead of teaching spiritual things. Right. The most powerful individual ever walked this earth never even owned a home. So they're saying that was Jesus the Christ, right?
So he didn't even own a house, didn't even own a car, didn't even own a donkey.
But when people come to you, brother, if you will learn to serve the Lord, he will bless you with that house and that Mercedes that you need. And Jesus didn't own a house or a Mercedes, right? So it's more about spiritual things than physical wealth. And that's the teaching that has to be taught today.
Yeah, see, that's the difference. You practice religion, but spirituality is a way of life.
Right.
You live it.
That's right.
There's a difference. See, religion have you practicing something. Right. You're trying to practice something. Spirituality is you living it. It's a part of your life. So you live it. Right? So some people say spirituality is unseen science. And science is seen spirituality. And that's why people mix the two up. So they say that one don't have science and one don't have, but they are the same. Spirituality is unseen science, and science is seen spirituality. And I think that's a closing.
You know, in my closing, I like to say this here. I was thinking about all the bootlegger houses selling that bootleg liquor. Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so. In the community, there was never no drive-by. Today with the dope and stuff, you got all kinds of drive-by. They would drink that booze, and that was it. Today they snorting that coke, shooting it up, and not only that, they're shooting up the houses with bullets. So
we're coming full circle, and we are coming back to our original existence. You said it earlier that it is in our DNA. And in the scripture, Jesus teaches that he would write his laws, his commandments, and his ways. He will scribe them in your heart.
Right.
Now, when he says scribe them in your heart, he's not talking about that pump. The innermost, centralmost part of your mind is where that stuff will be. You won't need the book. Right? As a matter of fact, we will be writing the next book on spirituality once we come into that evolution, once we evolve into that evolution. You got it. So, anyway, family, listen, thank you so much. House Key, always great to be here, baby. Always great to be here. Tune back in next Wednesday where you will have the truth live and in living spirit. May the blessings of the Most High continue to rest upon you. Peace, family. And for those of you that are online listening through Brother Stewart's Facebook, thank you for listening. May the blessings of the Most High continue to rest upon you as well. Peace, family.
All right, family. Peace. Hit the cash out. Y'all hit the cash out. Yeah, it's been over 100 people watching.
Stuart, man, I didn't know you getting money from the people, man.
No, ain't nobody getting no money.
Oh, okay.
You say you had 100 people.
I always tell them, like, yo, hit the cash out. Hit the cash out.
Looking out for you a little bit, right?
No, with crypto. Well, with crypto, they look out. With crypto. They look out with crypto.
How far you branch out?
Stuart, can you